Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome back to the channel. This morning I'm going to be telling you a little bit about some of the kind of nuances and caveats, if you like, with digital marketing. Now, many of you know I've been working in this sector for a long time. I've seen a lot of things, some good, some bad. One of the most sort of striking things in kind of recent years, perhaps even the last 1 or 2 years really, has been when companies throw up these contracts, whether it's a tender or whether they're looking for somebody freelance or part-time, full-time, whatever it might be, there's now so much emphasis on the tools, so it's almost as if like the companies believe that the more tools that you know about, so when I say tools, I mean like SaaS platforms, so software as a service platforms, and dashboards and analytics and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not denying that this stuff can help, and if you do know a lot about this kind of subject, if you like, it can definitely help to accelerate things, optimize things, streamline things, speed up the time, cut down the cost, so there are benefits to these things. However, there's one thing that I kind of totally refute, and that is that replaces the business model. Now, a number of years ago, probably a good 10 years ago actually, I was involved in like a project called ASEAN Business Network with a couple of different people. I was one of the founders, and we got talking to some of the people at Antal International. I think at the time, it's all changed now. At the time, there was like group marketing manager Sofia Benzina. She was from Russia. I believe she's still in the UK. She was like the group marketing manager for the group, and then we, I got to know. I had some interactions with Tony Goodwin, like the founder of Antal International, with like huge. Global recruitment agency. It's different businesses in the group. It's an independent company, but it's they've got global offices, and it's very successful. Anyway, look, one of the key things that I learned from him is that everything is about the business model. Because if you haven't got the business model right, if you haven't got something that flies off the shelves, that is in demand, that is affordable, and all the rest of it, you're almost wasting your time. So whatever you throw at it in terms of sales, marketing, digital marketing, SaaS platforms, dashboards, analytics, all the different components, if you haven't got a business model right, if you haven't nailed that, then you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're basically throwing money and resources at something that's not going to work. So that's point number one. Okay, so point number two is like there's now, because of since the pandemic, and a lot of people want to work remotely and fully remotely and stuff, there's kind of like an oversupply of people willing to do those types of jobs, apply for those types of jobs. Now, I'm not saying that the oversupply of people have got all the right skills, because I don't believe they have, and the reason I say that is because it's not just about knowing the tools, it's about having like real life experience, so by that I mean, if somebody says something to you on a conference call, you've got to have the wits about you to know whether they're bluffing it, trying to pull the wool over your eyes, or just trying to spin a load of rubbish. So the wages have kind of slid a little bit with regard to some of these digital marketing roles, and again, it's all linked to this technology, and the different advances. I do think if you can, obviously I have no idea who will watch this video, but if you're like a marketeer, somebody who has been working in digital marketing for a while, and you're kind of hitting the same roadblocks and stuff, maybe if you look at something like sustainability marketing, that's on the up, because a lot of companies want to reduce their carbon footprint, especially the bigger companies with shareholders and stakeholders and stuff, they're under constant pressure to, embrace more, eat green, and not greenwashing, but more green friendly, eco-friendly packaging, and reduce their carbon footprint with regard to their print and delivery and fuel and distribution and all that kind of stuff. So if you can kind of attack it from that side and try and maybe refocus on what you're doing away from, let's say, social media marketing. I mean, that's a dead duck. And the reason I say it's a dead duck is I'm not saying that's not useful to businesses, but there's so many people doing that now. There's people in right across the UK, many different countries across the world. Some of them in third countries or outside of Europe, and what I'm saying is it's not rocket science. Anybody can do that now, even like a teenager. Now they might not be able to do it as effectively as somebody like myself or somebody like yourself potentially, with a lot more experience and depth and knowledge about marketing and various tricks and growth hacks and stuff like that, but we can still do it, and when you think like the minimum wage in the UK is like 12.21, it's no surprise that a lot of employers are now putting out social media marketing roles at like 13-14 pounds an hour, and that's not enough. I don't work for that, to be honest. So when I say I don't work for that, I'm not in that kind of cohort. So my level of experience and the amount of time that I've been doing this, the range salaries are sort of 40, 45, 50, well, I haven't got 50k yet, but certainly 40, and that's not a lot of money nowadays. In the past, time a clock back sort of 10, 15 years ago, if you were getting that kind of money, you're doing well. But now, £30,000 isn't exactly a great salary. The minimum wage, based on a 37.5 hour week, which is kind of 7.5 hours a day, 5 days a week, is what most people do, is about 24k. So 30k is peanuts for like somebody with marketing skills. I actually think 35k is not great. If you can get like 42, 45, potentially 48, 50, anything above 42, 43 is a win, depending on your situation. Obviously, if you're married and you've got a mortgage and 2 car loans and 2 kids, then it's not going to be enough. But if you're like, let's just say, for example, if you're like a single person, you might be a woman, you might be a guy, and you haven't got like a mortgage, you haven't got car loans, credit card debts and all that kind of stuff. If you can get like 42, 45 grand, especially if it's fully remote, because that's the dream, isn't it? Everyone wants to be, based out in Lisbon or, Portugal or Spain or Gibraltar. I've worked from Gibraltar. I did 18 months out there before COVID. So if you can, get a fully remote contract and that kind of money, you're in a win-win situation, especially if it's like 35 to 37.5 hours a week. See, that's the thing. Pay attention to the hours, because employers might offer you these contracts at like, let's say like 42 grand, but if they want 45 hours, it weakens your hourly rate. I mean, if you can get like 30 hours, it has happened. I've done 30 hours before on quite good money, but which is great, because you got more free time, you're still getting the money. But if I'd say try and aim for like no more than 37.5 hours a week. That's if you can get the contracts in the first place, and then you're in quite a good spot, especially if it's fully remote, because then you can base yourself in different countries and you've got the best of all worlds. So that's what I wanted to say on that subject, and let's move on. Okay, so another thing I thought might be interesting for you is to kind of hear from me, some of the areas which are in decline in the digital marketing space, because there's always talk about which platforms and which strategies are going to make you loads of money. It's always the business model, by the way. It's not the actual strategies. The strategies help you to bring the business model alive and to enhance it and kind of put rocket boosters on it, but it's always the business model that will make you the money, not the actual tools. There's far too many businesses who have no over-reliance on the tools and strategies, but we haven't got a business model right, you see, so that doesn't make a shred of sense. Anyway, let's kind of get onto my point. I want to talk you through some of the areas which are in decline, notably in decline, and that's like organic Facebook reach, so for example, maybe just having like a Facebook group and not doing any paid ads in conjunction with it, things like that. These things have been around for a long time. Everyone knows how to do them. There's virtually no skill involved in setting these things up, and those areas are in decline. That's one of the areas that's in decline. So traditional banner ads, so display ads basically, so if you think of maybe when you went to a website and there's like a big banner at the top saying, happy clappy marketing, or happy clapping, I'm just making this up, it could be like a pannier market or a fruit and veg stall, or some other small business with a banner ad. Might be a moving banner ad like a GIF or GIF or something like that. That's in decline. You don't see many of those around nowadays. I understand why, because there's more options with AI for businesses to kind of get the word out about what they're about and stuff. So one of the other areas, and there's loads more, well, it's not loads more, but there are more. Just bear with me, just trying to find my cursor here. So yeah, some of the other areas that are in decline are overuse of stock images, believe it or not. There's a lot of stock libraries out there, Getty Images, deposit photos. Yeah, that's a good one, deposit photos. And a lot of businesses, and I've seen this as well, with different businesses that I've worked with, what they've done is to try and get around some of the costs of graphic design, like custom graphic design. They taken a kind of hedge bet, a gamble if you like, that it's going to be cheaper to pay XYZ to a stock photo library, and there's lots of them. Obviously iStock's the most popular one, but it's like Getty Images, there's deposit photos, there's numerous other ones as well. And by doing that, they have access to a lot of different images, which they can then maybe import into Canva and just put a little bit of text over it saying, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is the price, this is our opening hours, and they try and get around it that way. But that's also in decline. In some regions, not all, SMS marketing is in decline. I must admit, I haven't had a text message on my phone saying, hey, this is what we're offering, because I think the Information Commissioner, ICO, has brought in new rules around who can be spammed in this way. So also with email and newsletters and GDPR and stuff. So I think that's contributed to the decline of it as well. Look, these things constantly change, and it's good to kind of stay on top of what is working, what's a dead duck. Generic blog content for SEO, so that basically means just standard blurb, where people might copy and paste an article from somewhere, rewrite it either themselves or by AI, and then substitute some of the keywords for words which they consider relevant to their business type. Influencer like let's say an over reliance on influencer marketing. See, I think that's gone over the top. Originally this was like back in the day, when the term influencer marketing was around, it was just people who were famous, so let's take Gary Lineker or somebody of that stature, and they were considered to be an influencer. Whereas now, it's just been diluted. And now there's all these websites with all these thousands of influencers to choose from, and you've never ever heard of them, never ever. I was looking at one the other day. It's all about money. You see, people are trying to jump on the bandwagon and monetize these things, but it's of no benefit to me, or perhaps to your business, to have somebody pretending to be an influencer who nobody's ever heard of before. If it was Gary Lineker, fine. If it was some other famous person, Cher, a singer, or or it could be anybody, but if I've never heard of these people, what's the point? That is my point. So that's in decline as well. There's a few, see, email newsletters with no personalization. Now, with AI, you can now get something called AI personalization, which is like a bit of code, but you will copy and paste from the software. There's different types of AI personalization. There's different websites. I'm not going to go into that today, but make no mistake, they do exist, and if just a short Google search will most likely bring some of them up. And basically how that works is you obviously subscribe or pay to use a bit of software. You then place a snippet of code onto your website, and it will track who's looking at what on your website, and it will then in future make recommendations to those people via Messenger, WhatsApp, and this, that, and the other, email, and all the rest of it, about what might be considered of interest to those people who previously visited the website. So that's what's called AI personalization. But just getting back to this, look, a lot of companies send out newsletters. One of the companies I used to work for, they still do it, but I don't think it has the same visibility or the same effect, because I haven't read a company newsletter from any company for months, weeks, months, because we live in a different age. People have their smartphones in their pocket. They consume media in a different way, and that's why I got into YouTube, because YouTube is a bit easier to find for people than podcasts. A lot of these podcast platforms, you have to subscribe to them, and it's not as easy to find a podcast as it is to find a YouTube video based on what you're typing into YouTube. So times have changed, and I think people are, without a doubt, it's an absolute certainty, consuming all forms of media in a different way. And companies who maybe just put out it's a bit outdated, just putting out like a newsletter, there's loads of platforms where you can hash together a newsletter, cost effectively. It doesn't cost a lot of money, you don't need a lot of skill. Again, technology's moved forward in this area, but the truth is that I'm not sure they're that popular anymore. When you visit a website, honestly, when was the last time that you typed in your email address to start receiving a newsletter? I'm sure you can't remember. And likewise, the same with me. I think it's in decline. It almost certainly is. And the reason I'm mentioning these things which are in decline is because I did a bit of research into some of the areas which are in decline. So I'm not saying all newsletters are a dead duck, but the idea of a generic newsletter, once a month or once a quarter, is going to bring you floods of customers is an absolute nonsense, to be honest. So guys, I'm going to leave this video there. I've talked for a little bit too long as usual. Hope you found some of the stuff that I mentioned useful. I will be making some more videos soon. One of the ones I'll be making next, touch wood, if is about the video editors. So stay tuned for that. We'll keep a lookout for it, and I'll see you soon. Have a great day. Thank you.